listening to the QUESTionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the QUESTionnaires.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The QUESTionnaire.
Get your comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.
The media called it the conflict in the QUESTionnaire, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, and that's what this is. This is the Quest. I, of course, am the Unknown Factor, AKA That Way Wilson of hip-hop. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the Quest. We ain't doing hip-hop today. You know, we do movies sometimes, having Ellen Henry. Pretty much so. It's typically talking about them books with them pretty pictures, because that's what we'd like to do. But, you know, in season 2, we started something, and I would be in that whole co-host. Apparently, Scott just wanted to be on the show a lot. Scott, how you doing?
How's it going, guys? Good day.
Yeah. Scott co-hosted the last episode with Casey. Yeah.
Casey.
Yeah, Casey. It's been a lot, and there's been a blur. I ain't gonna lie. But right before that episode, we had the pleasure of having Tim Seeley on, you know, talking a bit of local man, right? And it was a pleasure. Today, yeah, we're going to welcome back the other half of that writing team for the third or fourth, or I don't know. Tony Fleecs is in the house, though.
He's back, baby.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to really talk about comic books this time.
Dude, Tony, how did that guy butcher your name so much?
Did Seeley butcher it?
No, not yours, not Seeley. I wouldn't expect Seeley to butcher your name. I seen a post on Instagram where you were doing a live interview with, I don't know who, but somebody, they I don't know how, it made me feel not so bad about how I butcher names, because I never got yours wrong. I always thought it was Fleeced, but I don't know what this dude, but it was not your last name, Tony.
The crazy one are when they get like the Fleekses or stuff like that. I'm like, that's like Gollum talk. There's no way that's what that says. Fleeks, I get. That's what it looks like. Fleece, you got to be a real elevated individual to get there, like you and me.
I'll take that as a compliment, right? I mean, I know everybody that watches this show can attest. I screw up a lot of names, man. But we're gonna get into a lot of things, Tony, because Tony.
Yes.
Since the last time we talked,
yes,
I feel like you've picked your pen up more for putting words on a page than you do pictures here recently.
Yeah, I mean, probably the last time we talked, I was already writing all this stuff. It started coming out, you know. But yeah, I'm working on 6 comics right now. 4 of them come out every month right now. 2 of them are just they have not been announced yet. But I'm constantly working, constantly creating comics and writing stuff, and still drawing Local Man. And I'm doing covers for Feral, and I do thumbnails for Feral, and I do covers for Army of Darkness. And so I'm constantly making something, you know, something's always due. And so, I've been very, very busy, real fortunate, you know, it's a real nice nightmare that I'm in.
Well, and I know last time you were on, Local Man had already started because you sent me an issue and you made Dave so jealous that I got to read Local Man like 2 months before it came out. Dude, I'm serious. Like he's one of the co-hosts over here as well, man. As well as he works at the comic book shop that is my local comic book shop, though it's not local. That's besides the point. Dude, he was so jealous. I got to read that like 2 months before it came out. So you got 2 projects you can't talk about.
You can't see them either.
Can you tell us? Can you tell us who's publishing them?
I mean, no. But here's what I'll tell you. If you were to think of 2 comic book publishers, it's those ones.
So I would say Image and
no, like the first 2, the ones your mom knows about, and everybody else.
Oh. What kind of process is that like, Tony?
Like writing the stuff?
Yeah, like there's when you get notification that you're we want you to write this, and then how far before it actually drops. from when you're first notified?
That's what's interesting with this type of stuff, and with Army of Darkness too. All the creator-owned stuff, I know, when the artwork is due, and I know everything about it. When it's work for hire stuff, I have no idea. Like, it's just, like they go, hey, we're interested in working with you. Would you like to do this? And then we discuss it, and then I turn in scripts, and then I don't know when it's supposed to come out. I don't know when it gets announced. It's just all, it's sort of like it's like an amorphous who knows what until it all comes together and is out one day.
Oh,
Yes.
can I just no, Tony, because there's so many things I want to ask, but I know you can't answer any of the questions based on the question that you just answered the way that you did, and it really kind of tickles the back of my brain, and I hope for everyone out there watching that it really makes you think that the man that's in the middle of writing Local Man, which as I told Tim, Tony, Local Man is just it's honestly it's like my favorite comic I'm reading right now as far as an ongoing period. It's you taken, and then like I said, you can check Tim's episode. I told this to Tim. It's very interesting because you've made it to where you've created a comic that I feel is very, very accessible. You know what I mean? It's something anybody could pick that book up and read it without a problem. But man, if you were a fan
Yeah.
of Image in the '90s, and I'll tell you, just like I did Tim, y'all went like that one meme back in the day, that dude just doing
Salt
this.
Bae.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just salting the absolute crap out of it to perfection with just little things that don't make it to where if you weren't aware of that stuff, it would in any way be like a negative impact, because it'd just be like, oh, here's these characters, that's cool. But if you know all those characters, it's like, whoa, I it's such a tight blend, man. I love how you guys have pulled that off. If you want to hear way more about Local Man, like I said, y'all go check out Tim Seeley's interview. Because we talked about Local Man the first time you were on. I talked about the process. I I hope everybody out there is reading Local Man. If you are a fan of superhero comics or were at any point, why are
That's the
you
one to
not
do.
reading Local Man? Right?
Yeah.
That's my honest question. Um, but I think what I told, and I'm Scott, I'm gonna go in a different order than I told you. Go figure, man. There's a reason I go by the we had a little pre-show conversation, try and start doing that with the co-host. And then I'm gonna totally like take the conversation I had and go off the rail, right? Because in comparison to that, man, what I want to know is how did Army of Darkness come about? Was that a pitch you made? Because I remember that director's ending and was
Yeah.
always curious, Tony. And the only thing I've got to finish is the final issue. I have not completed that all the way yet. Everything else, like I've read the rest of the arc. I love how you've done it as far as the blend of all the different times and
Mhm.
jumping around, even though like for a minute I was like, wait. And then I was like, oh, okay. It took me a sec, dude. It hurt my brain for about 5 seconds before I was like,
Yeah.
okay, we're jumping between three times. Okay, I got it now. I love how you blended that, but how did that come about, man? Was that a pitch you made? Was that something they brought to you?
They brought it to me. I had worked with Dynamite for probably maybe 10 years now. They hired me on originally when I was doing My Little Pony comics. They did like a Dynamite Kids line, and they hired a bunch of My Little Pony artists and like Art and Franco and like a bunch of kids comics people to do like kids versions of like Vampirella, or I don't think they did an Army of Darkness, but just like a few of their like their licensed comics that they do all the time. Battlestar Galactica, I think, was one of them at the time. And so around that time, they also started doing like some Scotty Young style little baby like covers, and they could not get Scotty Young, and so they got me. And so I started off. I think the first stuff I did for them was like covers to Purgatory, the old Chaos comics, like Brian Polito's Purgatory. And then I did a lot of Vampirella stuff like that. And I did my first Army of Darkness stuff was like Vampirella meets Army of Darkness. And so it's like romance stuff with little baby Ash and baby Vampirella. So I did like a ton of these little Scotty Young ripoff covers where they weren't like full ripoffs, but it was basically like I was just doing what he was doing, so I had worked with them a ton, and then I did some interior stuff for them. I did just a lot of like licensed kid stuff, like the same way that I was doing ponies. And when Stray Dogs took off, Nick Barucci at Dynamite is, I think, one of the best at like keeping an eye on what's happening in comics, watching independent comics, watching people come up at the big two or whatever, and finding new talent, and then just going out and grabbing them. So like Mark Russell, when he did Flintstones, nobody else knew what to do with him right away, and Barucci grabbed him and put him on like Lone Ranger and on Red Sonja, and like he just has like a good eye for that type of stuff. So when Stray Dogs came out, they hired Trish and I to do a bunch of covers, and they wanted us to do like put Stray Dogs on our covers, and so we did that. We did an Army of Darkness one like that, and we did a Vampirella and a Red Sonja and a few other things, and we did Gargoyles covers for them. But then that was the art. But then they said, "Hey, we've got Army of Darkness, and we want to do something for the 30th anniversary. Is that something that interests you?" And I love the Evil Dead trilogy, and I love horror movies.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, that interests me. And I also, at that point, had only done creator-owned comics as a writer. I mean, I'd written for like My Little Pony and for, I guess maybe just My Little Pony. I don't know. But I hadn't written like with an editor and on a longer thing like this. And so I was like, well, let me try that out and do, work for hire thing and sort of see how that goes. And when they asked me about it, I rewatched the movies, and I thought about like what I would want to do with it. And I thought about that director's cut ending, and I asked them, I said, like, has anybody, because they've been making that comic for 20 plus years, I guess, like they started in 2004, so maybe just 20. But I was like, has anybody ever done that director's cut ending where Ash wakes up in the future? And when they said no, I was just like, well, how can this be? Like it was like this, they had just left this golden opportunity there this whole time. And then so I was like, all right, well, I want to do something with that, but how do you do that? And I thought about, I really love Jason Aaron's Thor, like God of Thunder, like the God Bomb story, the one that they made into that awful movie.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let me do that with Ash. I'll do the future Ash, and then I'll do an Ash and then I'll explain what happened to the Ash at the end of the regular movie, and then we'll keep it in the medieval times, and I'll tell a story about Sheila in the medieval times, and then as we go on, like towards the end of this thing, we'll start sort of crossing those things over and getting those people together and stuff. So
like I said,
yeah.
I've read all the way up to the final issue, Tony. And
we're still way off from the final issue. It's going up to, there's going to be 13 issues total. Good news for you.
I read too many comics. I'm totally down with that, because that's awesome. That's honestly awesome, because I was like, how's he going to wrap this all up in this issue? Because it just really didn't seem conceivable at the point that I'm at. I must be thinking of a different series, Tony. Sorry.
I think when they initially announced it was going to be a 6-issue thing, and then after the first issue, they announced that they were extending it to 12. I always outlined it. I wrote it as a 12-issue thing, and then when we pitched it, I was like, so I want to do 12 issues of this, and they were just like, what about 6? And I said, well, let's see how it goes, and they're like, yeah, let's see how it goes. If it sells, then we'll do all of them. And it sold well enough, so they're going to do all of them. So good news for us. Otherwise, it would have really just ended on a dumb cliffhanger at the end of issue 6.
And now I know what's going on my poll list.
Nice.
Yeah, Scott. I would highly recommend that. I mean, like I said, though, everything you're dropping right now, Tony, writing, like now you're gonna have me writing, and I want to get into that so bad, but I can't, and I just, he's gonna duck and dodge. Ask a question,
What are you
Scott.
talking about? The secret stuff? I'm not going to tell you about it at all, so don't worry about it. We'll talk about it when it comes out.
I was just curious about working with Trish. What she like? How's the collaboration with her?
Oh, it's great. So like Stray Dogs and Feral, I'm in a bunch of different collaborations right now with a bunch of different artists, and Stray Dogs and Feral is like the one that is the most, where I do the most sort of like drawing and directing, and it's the most I'm the biggest pain in the ass on that book because I do thumbnails for it and then I letter it too at the end. So I sort of have my hands on it at the beginning and then I have my hands on it at the ending. And so whenever it comes out, it's sort of like I sort of get the final say on everything. But it's also I found Trish through her artwork, and it was exactly what I wanted these comics to look like. So she does such a great job of like bringing these characters to life and acting with them. And so I love working with her. We're always in. We did one of these earlier today, me and her together, and we talked about how we're always pretty much in communication. You know, whether it's through, emailing scripts back and forth, or we're texting all day long, or messaging, or on the phone, or whatever. So these books are more than like, say, like with Uncanny Valley, I give a script to Dave Wachter, who's another person who's a friend of mine. Like we're in touch, but we don't talk constantly through the whole creation of the thing. Like I'll give him a script, we'll turn it in, I'll hit him with a couple notes or whatever, and then he'll turn the colors in. Like it's very, like it's more of a regular comic book production thing. Stray Dogs is like or Feral in this case, that's the one that's still going on, is like a class project or something. It's something, it just feels like something everybody's getting together to make a thing, So like Trish on her part, she's like, we're always in contact. And then Tone, who draws the backgrounds, he will like come out and stay at my house for a couple weeks while we're working, and we'll like work in the same room together. Like it's super, super collaborative.
That's awesome.
And I'm curious, man, because like I said, when you were initially on Tony, I think Stray Dogs is the most unique perspective I've ever seen of a serial killer story. I feel like you've done that again with the zombie story, Tony. I've never seen a zombie story done from the aspect of three cats, and it's a case of rabies. I can't. And so, what put that in your head, and why do you like to torture animals, Tony? Why? What do you got against
Don't
cats
like
and
to
dogs,
torture
man?
them.
You trying to send them all to heaven?
I think that there's so much you can do with the animal stories. Like we've been making like animal comics for years and cartoons and stuff, and this just seems like a whole genre that has just sort of been skipped over. Like there's so much you can do in there. There's I feel like we could, we're hoping to make Feral for a few years. Like we want to do like a long run on this, but after it's done, there's 5 other animal horror stories we could make, just because it's sort of untouched. And even as I'm saying that, and animal comics sort of became a thing after Stray Dogs, like I don't think any of the creators of the comics were like, I'm going to make a Stray Dogs, but I know the publishers are going like, Jesus Christ, they sold a heck ton of Stray Dogs.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Men's Best Friend just dropped. As well as Animal Pound. So you've got both of those that I would say, yeah, I could agree. You probably sort of made that, and I mean, not necessarily made it happen, but you probably definitely influenced producer or publishers to go ahead with that, because I mean, they've seen the number Stray Dogs did, and I still want to see a Stray Dogs animated film, but that's neither here nor there. So you said you have 5 other stories. Tony, can you? I can't get you to tell me any of those either, because then you're giving away things for the future. You're just like, Tony came here to tease my brain. This is what I've come to the conclusion of, Scott.
We put an ad in the back of Stray Dogs Dog Days for a book that I was hoping to do right after, called Crosshairs. That's like a rabbit revenge story. And then Trish and I have talked about like a horse ghost thing that we'll probably do after Feral. That sort of would be like to sort of close the loop on me and her doing like horror animal comics, and also coming from My Little Pony, and sort of like come back around and do like a pony comic that's like a horror thing.
Man, I feel like I need to hit up Trish and have her on the show, Tony. She's never been on, and we need to get her over here on the Questionnaire for sure. Just because I would love to sit and be like, so what did you think when Tony was like, hey, let's take nice, fluffy, cute animals and just make it all bloody and gory? That's what we're gonna do. Like,
what's crazy is that she's not into that stuff at all. She doesn't like horror movies. she likes, just like, she draws that way because she loves cartoons. She loves Disney stuff and chipmunks and stuff like that. But when I told her the pitch for Stray Dogs, and I told her, like, in person at a convention we were both at, I told her the first issue, and she was like, I want to do that. And then we got on the phone and I told her the whole outline, like the whole, 5 issues of Stray Dogs, and she was so excited about it. So I think like when she comes up against it and she really has to draw those like hard to draw scenes, like she struggles a little bit there, but she's so good and so talented and a pro that she can do it. But it's not something she ever would have got to on her own. But yeah, she's just a pro. She's great.
I mean, I think it's great to push boundaries like that. Who did I see? I seen a post from somebody. I think it was Michael J. Straczynski, if memory serves me proper, as far as like, get out of your comfort zone, but then work in your comfort zone as well. And I think it's funny because with Stray Dogs, you put her in her comfort zone, and at the exact same time, took her out of it, man. It's like, hey, here's comfort, you're not cool with this.
Right, yeah.
Which,
it's a good mix of both, for sure. And I mean, that's sort of what we're doing with Feral too, is like, it's in our comfort zone. This is something that we know how to do, that we feel confident with, but then at the same time, Stray Dogs, we had all the way planned out. We knew what every issue was. We knew what happened on almost every page. And so this one, it's a much looser outline. Like, we know what happens at the end. We know some things that happen in the middle, but in between here and there's a lot of room for us to sort of like go on adventures and go take left turns and stuff and go places we didn't, think of from the very beginning.
I'm gonna take a left turn right after Scott asks another question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I'm curious. Like, so, I started reading Stray Dogs, and I'm a big dog person, so it was extremely emotional to read it, right? And that's not to take away. It means that you're a great writer, because if you're able to.
Did you stop? You did not finish it?
I did actually stop. Yeah, I watched the show.
Yeah.
But because I'm such a big dog fan, it really was hard to read. But that's the amazing part about it, right? Is you create a lot of emotion for the reader, and I think that's why it gripped so many people, right? And I noticed it with Local Man too, right? There's a lot of emotion with that main character.
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious, like. As a writer myself, I know I pull from a lot of stuff that have happened to me in my life. Is this kind of some stuff that has happened in yours?
I was never kidnapped by any serial killers. Get that right.
Well, you know what I mean.
No, Local Man absolutely is both Seeley and I working through all kinds of issues and stuff. Like that book came out of both of us were like, Seeley was closer to coming out the other side of it, but we both sort of had recently gone through divorces. We both had both had that sort of like feel like everything was wrong, like you failed at something, and sort of like that was a lot of working through that. And Stray Dogs, I'm sure I was working through something, but I don't have the capacity to figure out what it was exactly. But the emotional stuff is what gets me excited, like as far as like figuring out characters and figuring out like why we treat each other the way we do, and why our brains sometimes turn against us, or like why we do things where, like if like in Local Man, if Jack stood back from it and looked at everything that he did in that book, he would just be like, why did I do, why did I do these things, and that happens in Feral too, and it it's what excites me about writing. It's sort of like characters and them being flawed, and then making, taking them down certain paths and bringing them low and then raising them back up high, right? Like, I feel like there's something exciting about having something like, you didn't get to the end of Stray Dogs, but there's a character in Stray Dogs that is like a betrayer who like is a snitch who betrays all the other dogs, and we bring him real low, and then at the end of that book we bring him all the way back up, where he's the best of them. So that sort of stuff really excites me, even more than like the action or figuring out like clever, let's make it zombies but with cats, or like actually telling the emotional part of the stories is the main thing that I'm there for.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the hardest thing to do. But I'm glad it worked for you. I'm sorry it worked hard.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, to me, that tells me that you're an amazing writer, right? So that's, and like, it's funny you talk about how you using those characters, because the series that I'm writing with my friend, with my own character that I started writing, it was the same thing, right? It was a trauma that happened to me when I was younger, and it's my way of kind of building that character, right? And I think it's really important to have that emotion in those characters.
And I think
sure.
personally, if as a creator in almost any entertainment form, in my opinion, if you are not accessing that part of yourself and using it to some capacity, then you're never going to get to the depths of what you're actually truly capable of. You know what I mean? You have to be able to look inside yourself and reflect at a level it's slightly uncomfortable, to be frank. You know what I mean? Like there are times to reflecting like that. It's bloody well not fun, but I do think it creates some of the greatest art throughout the entirety of history. And with that, you just don't have that, man. And that's why even what you say, it's fun coming up with the fun ideas. I do love how you take all of these things and you put so much emotion in all these characters. Even from everything from Ash to, I mean, with the cats you've got in Feral right now, Local Man is like Crossjack. That's deep, yo. That's just deep. Tony, I don't know, it's deep, man. I
Such a goofy character too. Like he's, when he has that costume on and he's hucking around, throwing stuff around and stuff. It's like, I can't believe, I write it and Tim and I make it together, and I look at that guy and I'm just like, I can't believe people care about this fool. Like he's such a goob, but we crack him open and we show you where his pain comes from and whatnot.
Well, it's an underdog story, man, and I think people tend to appreciate an underdog story because you're selling somebody that was given a position and then just. But I'll tell you what, to another story you're on right now, Tim, and I just got through reading issue 1 a little bit earlier, man. It makes me want to ask you a question about something that you're getting ready to write that you can't talk about, because this is Uncanny, right? But this is Uncanny Valley, right? Right? Oh, I hope that giggle was a tell, and we'll leave it at that, right? But this is Uncanny Valley, right? Right? Did I just figure? I think I might have just figured a little something out. Maybe, I don't know. Tony man, you gonna shake your head no whether I did or not. Don't tell me nothing wrong, right? But this, Tony, I think it's intriguing, man. The things that you have meshed up here, making it to where I wouldn't say Roger Rabbity, but the fact that there ostensibly are both those worlds, and apparently at some time they meshed, and this kid was produced from a human and a cartoon. And dude, I even already see the emotion building within that just from the end of issue 1. I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to give no spoilers because that's real new. I don't want to really spoil Feral. I don't really spoil Uncanny Valley for any of y'all. I highly recommend you go check out both of them. They're both phenomenal. But just the way you wrapped that, it had an emotional touch to it, but at the same time, the comedy of the grandpa showing up like Yosemite Sam, let's be real honest, but with a big old beard and a shot. Like, dude, I loved it. How do you guys have a plan as far as how long you intend to take that issue wise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one is planned. It's solicited as a 6-issue thing, but I planned it out always as a 12-issue thing. So it's supposed to. Hopefully, we hit enough. We sold enough of the first issue that they're going to let me do the whole thing. Sort of like with Army of Darkness, except with this one, this is like a story that I've been working on for like 10 years. Like it's something that I've had maybe longer. I was working on this before I met my ex-wife. Like it's something that I've just had in my notebook and that I've sort of been like putting together, and And so it has a very like planned out beginning, middle, and end, and then at the end of it, there could be more, but like as far as like this story that we're telling right now, it's a big 12 issue thing. So hopefully you'll get to the end of that too.
And that will go on my pull list.
Yeah, I very, very much hope, man, because it's
me
an
too.
intriguing blend, and it's funny because I feel like you're essentially kind of like I assume Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was some kind of influence for this.
Oh, the biggest, yeah, of course.
Okay. I just didn't want to say that it was without knowing from the writer himself that it was.
You know what's crazy?
But
Did you see Saltburn?
So
wait. No.
What?
It's this movie that came out last year, at the end of last year.
Right now.
And it's exactly the same as The Talented Mr. Ripley. Did you ever see that with the Matt Damon?
Yeah, but it's been a while.
Jude Law.
Yeah, Jude Law's in it too. But the director of it was they were like, this is sort of like a modern Talented Mr. Ripley, and she was like, I don't really think that at all. I don't think there's any, it's like obviously there's a connection. So like, yeah, with this, obviously this is a coming of age Roger Rabbit story.
Is there a connection to Cool World?
Yeah. No, the grandfather and the son do not have sex with any cartoons in this. There's none of that. But it's like I saw Roger Rabbit. It came out when I was like 10 years old, 8 years old maybe, and it made a huge impact on me. I love cartoons, and when I saw cartoons and real people together, it sort of like rewired the way I thought everything should be. Like I was just like, I wish everything had real people and cartoons together. Like it was like, to me, that time period also includes like Cool World, and it includes MC Scat Cat and Tony the Tiger and like all this stuff where people and cartoons and real people would like be hanging out with each other, and it feels like a real time. And I thought it was going to be all the time. Like I thought we would just continue, every movie could just have cartoon characters in it. And when it wasn't like that, it sort of bummed me out. So this is sort of.
Can we just all take a moment then and tell Warner Brothers that they need to release Acme or Coyote versus Acme, please and thank you?
I don't think they're listening to us, but I would love it if they would. They're like, we were going to trash this for the tax money, but ever since the Unknown Factor and Tony and Scott.
Well, how about this? For everyone that hears it, realize, that film. I'm sorry, you said that, and I'm getting my boy into Looney Tunes. He's only 4, and like when and then you're saying they needed to continue it, and then here's this great opportunity, and then just a bunch of corporate so and such and such is.
Yeah, it does seem like the corporate shit is getting worse and worse. Either that or like we weren't just paying attention before, but it does seem like they will make things worse, and it's okay because they are in charge. Like I guess probably it's always been that way, but now we can just see it. But like all of my stuff worked better 10 years ago, and now it's crappier because somebody else, is making better money on it somehow. But we're down a direction that we don't need to go.
Yeah. I'm sorry, just the
times.
That's the one thing. It just really annoys me, man. That there's a phenomenon. But I love that you've actually at least brought something that allows people to touch on that. You know what I'm saying? In that part of the world, in that part of storytelling, because I don't think it's something that I've ever seen. It's been a while since I've seen something mesh as what you're doing with Uncanny Valley.
I don't think anybody's ever done it as good as Dave's doing it in this book. Like it looks super cool. Like the trick with doing it this way is you got to have somebody that can do realistic, or at least like a version of realistic, which is what Dave is great at. He's doing this sort of like real painterly, sort of European looking. You look at it, and if a cartoon never showed up in that thing, you would just think it's a story about a boy and his mom. Like it's just a very naturalistic. The lighting's all beautiful. And then he also can draw these cartoon characters so that when they show up, it just looks like a Roger Rabbit. Like it looks exactly right. And even when they did a Roger Rabbit comic, it just was drawn like a comic book. So it didn't look like two different things together. It looked like two comic book characters next to each other, or the Cool World comic just looked like a cartoony comic, you know. So I'm very happy that that Boom was able to get my buddy Dave to do this book, because he is killing it. And I feel like it's a real showcase for him too. Like, he's been doing Ninja Turtles for years, and he's been working on Marvel stuff lately. He just recently did Punisher, and he did Ghost Rider before that, and he rules. But this is like an incredible showcase for him, because also when you're doing those big two comics, like they're not like, hey, can you color yourself? Can we take a little extra time and make this perfect? They're like, we got to put one of these out every month, so we'll get a colorist on here, and it stuff looks great, but it just on this book it looks amazing. Like, he's just really killing it.
Oh yeah, no, the art in this is phenomenal. Now look, I'm gonna give a little bit of a spoiler for the first issue, right? Just so y'all can dude, it's like the third page, Tony. All right, I'm not gonna go beyond that. It's like the third page, but when they're like, "Come on, let's go do it," and they're all trying to convince the new kid, which is the main character, to jump off the bridge, and they all jump off the bridge, and he goes like a cartoon, just outline into the ground, and stands up and is like, "That was crazy," and then here they both are with broke legs.
Yeah.
That if for nothing else, everyone should pick up that comic, just because, like, for real, look, kids will try to convince each other to jump off a bridge.
Sure. I jumped out of barns. I jumped off a lot of things, houses. Yeah. And I was a chubby little kid. I wasn't any kind of. I could have really hurt myself, but somehow I did all right.
Well, did you ever make an outline in the ground like that?
I never did any. I was never flattened like a pancake or got ran over by a steamroller or anything like that.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking to a cartoon, Tony. Which, if I was, I mean, just to be clear, that would have been totally cool. I just wanted to know, because I'd have been like, well.
That's what this comic is for me, is a lot of wish fulfillment in that regard. Like, if I was a cartoon, you would not be speaking to me right now. I would just be off living my best cartoon life out in the world, getting into cartoon mischief, you know. But as a kid, you know, I saw Roger Rabbit, and I thought about how cool it was that they had cartoons and people together. And I really did think, like, how cool it would be to be a cartoon. And so that is, like, the very baseline. Like, if you're selling this to somebody, if you're telling them to try it out, it's just like, what if you could be a cartoon, you know? So, like, that's a lot of that is in here. It's a lot of, like, every issue we sort of like unveil a new cartoon power or two, and we introduce new cartoon characters and stuff. And so it's just sort of like watching this kid learn about himself and his family and where he comes from, and sort of like uncover these new abilities he has, and then find out why that makes him special or dangerous or whatever.
Everybody go buy this comic so they can do all 12 issues. That's all that I'm saying, right? Because I really, truly want to see how this arc ends. I'd like to think I have pretty good taste in comics, you know what I mean, as far as what I read. I hope, and I'm, you know, so I'm telling you, this is it's a damn good comic, man. It really is. It hits a lot of different points. It hits the comedy notes. You hit the notes of emotional. You hit the notes of, like, a disconnect of not knowing something and wanting to try and figure it out. Like, you hit so many different things just within the first issue of this, Tony, you know, which, again, like Scott said, I mean, it shows that, dude, you know how to write. It just amazes me how much, since we even last talked, and now that I want to pick your brain and see if you're doing something else uncanny, but you won't talk about it.
I'm not doing anything uncanny besides Uncanny Valley. I promise you. Now,
does it have an X involved?
Themselves are uncanny? Perhaps, you know.
Ask a question, Scott, because I want to ask a bunch he won't answer.
So you've got all these. I think you said you got 4 that you wrote yourself that were like creator-owned type stuff, and 2 other things that you're working on. Is there something that you've been working on for a long time that you kind of just sat in your back pocket, just keep picking away at it, and the one piece that's like the one that stands out to you above all?
Yeah, well, Uncanny Valley is one of those for sure. But then yeah, I have basically like this long list of when I was like before I made Stray Dogs and before I made Time Shopper and um I made like logos for all these things that are like the things that I was working on, and I printed them all up and I hung them on a bulletin board over my desk, and I would think about them all the time and think about like, all right, well, I would have ideas for them. I'd write them down in my notebook. And so there are two other stories. One of them is like a family kids thing, and one of them's like a crime thing. And none of the stories that I like, obviously, Feral and Stray Dogs are sort of in the same wheelhouse, like in the same world. But a lot of the stuff, I don't have two ideas that fit in the like go on the same shelf, really. You know?
Yeah.
Like I guess Uncanny Valley could go on a similar shelf just because of the animation connection, but yeah, I've got a bunch of other stuff that is sort of like bubbling and cooking. But the four that I have right now is Local Man, Feral, Uncanny Valley, and Army of Darkness. So I don't know no Army of Darkness, but the other ones are all creator owned, and then the other two are just work for hire stuff.
Awesome.
You have been so busy since we last spoke, Tony.
That's true.
It's amazing, man. I'll tell you, if you want to see Tony draw a little, you can go over to the PanCon on the check the Patreon over on a PanCon. He actually drew a My Little Pony alien form, which still, just so you know, Dave wants that on a T-shirt.
I do. I think about making stickers of it all the time. That came out pretty good.
Dude, the fact that you put a pony mouth on for the inside mouth like you did. No, pretty good. I know you could get Dave to buy a shirt. I'll tell you that, Tony. Like I know for a fact Dave would buy a shirt. Like
That's good.
I would take a shirt of that. Well, I'll be honest, I'm a huge fan of aliens. I would have taken a shirt of pretty much every piece that everyone made on a shirt because they were all phenomenal, man. But yours had a level of comedy to it where I don't think. Well, no, Sean's Roger Rabbit with the buck teeth too. So, but those are the only two that really had a. Well, no, my bad. You did Cat Dog. I guess I made some really screwy combinations on that episode.
Yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah, So if you want to see him draw, you can check that out, man. Like I said, it was a heck of a time. But it's just, God, Tony, stop writing things because now I have to add.
I would love to.
Well, no, I don't. I don't want you to. I don't mean that because you said. Because look, I'll put it like this, and I know you can't announce it, but I don't know if I should. I'm not gonna say it because I feel like you're just gonna have me adding the company to my pull list that I really don't add to my pull list. You know what I mean?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, you said the big two.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and
Which
I'm assuming it's one for each, dude. And if I'm sporting this shirt, what one do you don't think I put on my pull list? You know what I mean?
Let me make it easy for you. The one for the other one is just a one shot. You won't have to put it on your pull list. You just go in your store and buy it and be done with it. You'll be move on with your life.
Ooh. You keep making me want to ask more questions you won't answer, Tony.
I know. I got questions in my head too.
But I feel like I've at least gotten a little bit of information, right? Like just a little bit. I'm trying to.
I feel like this is the crazy thing is I don't know when they'll say anything. So this could be 6 months from now. It could be tomorrow. Who knows when you'll know?
Yeah.
That's gotta be the weirdest thing from going to how you've handled so much as far as the 4 books that are currently dropping to doing something like that. What's your feelings about that, man? As far as just knowing, okay, well, this is out there, and I don't. Because look, I ain't gonna lie. I've got some verses that are out there as far as a hip hop artist, and they've been out there for a while. And there's part of me that's like, are these ever gonna see the light of day?
Yes. Well, I think they will. In this case, they will.
Oh yeah.
You know.
I mean, I'm sure they will. But like, does it give you an angst?
No, I don't have any angst about it. The cool thing about the way my career has sort of gone or is right now is that I probably said this the first time I was on. When I did Star Wars comics, that was like my only real bucket list thing. I drew Star Wars for real Star Wars, and it was awesome, and I had a great time, and I was like, I feel like I did great work on it, and so I came out the other side of that, and I didn't have any like doing all this stuff now is cool, but it's not like it's not something that I was chasing after necessarily. And the real like focus of my career right now is making these creator-owned books and building this library of the stuff that I own, that I have control over, that like makes money for me when I'm sleeping, like and so this stuff, there's not a lot of stress about it, but the only stress is just trying to make it good. So that part, I don't, because you do get different eyes on it than I get on my creator-owned stuff. So I want people to show up there and go like, oh, this guy rules. What else does he do?
Well, how about the aspect of, and you could say the same thing in regards to Army of Darkness, when you're when you're doing Feral or Uncanny Valley or Local Man or Stray Dogs or any of these books, they don't have an audience that's already there for them. You have to create the audience. Now, in the case of Army of Darkness and the two other projects that you've got coming up, these things all have audiences that are already there. How do you make sure that you don't get a death threat?
I don't know. With Army of Darkness especially, I feel like there's not another property at Dynamite or another licensed property that I can think of off the top of my head that I would be more comfortable writing, because I write horror stuff and I write stuff that's funny, and like it's an adventure stuff. Like I felt as soon as they said it, I was like, oh, absolutely. Like that's right in my wheelhouse. I can do that. And so I never, not for a moment did I think people would be like, how dare he? Because also there have been 20 years of those comics, and some have been great and some have been bad. And so like, I knew I wasn't going to do the worst one. And I thought like, I got a pretty good shot at maybe doing the best one. So that's sort of what I'm aiming at, like I look at it as like, I treat it like a creator-owned comic. Even though I only get from it what I get paid to make it, and there's no money on the other side of that. I think about it the same way I think about Feral or Uncanny Valley or whatever, because I love that stuff. And in the same way I was saying with the big two, like somebody might come to Army of Darkness that doesn't know who I am, but they'll read it. Maybe they read every Army of Darkness comic and they go, holy shit, or holy crap, that one was really good. What else does this guy do?
You and Tim are really just messing with my PG rating, Tony. It's that local man in y'all, ain't you? You just writing real
live?
raunchy books.
Just put a little bleep for me?
Y'all, dang it. Here everybody thought I was going to be the problem when we went to PG, and I think it's hilarious. It totally hasn't been me, but that's besides the point, man. Like, whatever. I don't even really care that much. It's just funny. But I think it's funny though.
On this,
huh?
If they made it an hour in on this, I'm sure they're.
Oh no, dude, yeah, dude. If look, and if I'm pretty sure if they're fans of Tim Seeley, like Tim Seeley don't do kid books. Like you've done some kid books that are very much kid oriented. Me and Tim talked about this. It's like, yeah, you don't do anything that you would put in the hand of a kid, Tim. Which I mean, he does great work, but it's just, some people don't write stuff for kids, and that's just how it is, man. If everybody wrote everything, that would just be really odd and probably get really generic over time too, to be real honest. So I'm glad it is the way it is as far as how that works. But as far as with Army of Darkness, dude, I think it's awesome because the way you're approaching it. Not only that, the concept that you came up with as far as being like, can I do the end of that director's cut? I can't think of how many times I've seen things posted about I'd love to see the rest of this story. Like I mean, and I'm talking 10 years back, I've seen people like, I'd love to see this story continued. And finally, 30 years later, which kind of blows my mind. It's been 30 years a little bit. That's that old, but that's a whole different point altogether. That you're finally, and I think, man, like, and I think it's funny because I don't think you did it as a fan service, but you're very much doing the fans a service in giving an end to a director's cut that Tony, I mean, if it hadn't been done in the comic books yet, I think the chances were pretty slim. So apparently you were the slim chance that was like, I got one to wrap this up proper, which I mean is amazing, Tony. I mean, if you really think about it, because I mean I can't think about how many comics they've done from Dynamite for Army of Darkness, but I know, I mean, there was an Evil Dead comic like before Army of Darkness ever even existed by Mark Verheiden, you know?
Yep.
So they've been done for a very, very long time, man. And I think just the fact that they brought that to you and that was your pitch back. I want to hear, like, and then a revenge bunny story.
Well, I'm excited. So where are you at on Army of Darkness? Did you read 4, 5?
Oh, man, look, you're gonna make me dig into my comics. Hold on. I am in the middle of 7.
Oh, okay. So you're all the way up. Yeah, like it gets weird. Like it starts to get crazy.
Yeah.
So,
And in the best
I'm excited.
Evil Dead Army of Darkness way, you know?
Yeah.
Like I think
where it's headed is more of that, and like it gets crazier, but it also gets, like all of my stuff, I try to make it emotional and I try and make it sort of like surprising. And my favorite part about putting this thing together, once they said I could do it, was like I went and I looked at all the interviews with Bruce Campbell and with Sam Raimi and Ted Raimi and Ivan Raimi, and they all had sort of like different takes on what the next thing was going to be, but there were sort of things that all of them said. Like they all said, Ash versus the Techno Army of Darkness, and like they would drop these little hints about what it was going to be. But they also then, when they made the Ash versus Evil Dead show, they took it in a different direction. Like they just went from the theatrical ending, right? Like Ash is, goes back to work at the S-Mart and he's still working in, package stores or big box stores after that. And he had gotten older. And so a lot of what Ash versus Evil Dead was about too, was about like the old Ash and what it means to be sort of like getting too old for this stuff, like how I said stuff. And, and so I knew that, unless they did it with like CGI, they weren't going to go back and do the story of 1993 young Ash and waking up in the future. So I knew that there probably wasn't a chance that those guys were going to do that story. And especially like at the end of Ash vs. Evil Dead, they do sort of like a version. They go to the future and they do stuff like that. So I felt, like I said, I definitely didn't think I was going to death threats. I felt sort of like situated well to tell that story well. And I got excited about being able to tap on all the things that they had sort of mentioned, but throw my own stuff in there. And then you'll see when it ends, like the way it wraps up, it sort of makes it so that everything works, which is something I like, as a nerd, as a fan of stuff like this, when I read, remember how did you read the Buffy comics?
No, I did not.
No. So I watched the show and I read those comics, the Joss Whedon ones that came out in the early mid 2000s or whatever. And they fit right in with the show. Like it's basically the show. And so like having something like that where it's like another DVD box set that you can put next to the DVD where it's like, this is how this story ends. Something really appealing about that to me. So this thing, when you get to the end of the 12th issue and then there's a one shot at the very end, it's sort of all fits nice, and I'm excited about getting there. And Pop Man, the new artist on it, he's kicking ass, and Brad, who colors it, is really has like made the transition between the two artists great, and he just has like a great tone for horror stuff. He colors Feral and Stray Dogs and everything else. Local man too.
And I mean, just like I said, you've done very well bringing in. Oh, did you watch Army of Darkness right before you started watching, or right before you started writing this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that first issue is almost word for word Army of Darkness most of the time. Like I wrote it as an entry point for people, not like they had never seen Army of Darkness, but I was going to be doing so much stuff from the movie, like using so much stuff that I needed to remind everyone, like, here's where we left off. So yeah, I watched it and I went through and I wrote notes about, like, you know, Sheila didn't have much of a character, but there was stuff in there that, like, you know, when we start the thing, she just lost her brother, and she loses Ash at the end of it, and it's all about, like, loss for her. And so I'm like, all right, well, that's what her character's about. And then it was sort of like looking at all these people and trying to figure out, like, beyond the surface, like, how do I write these characters? What are they?
I love to see how you've expanded on the character of Sheila within this comic too, in all honesty. And I'm very curious where you're going to take her in the medieval ages in the next, I guess, 6 issues and well, 5.5 issues, because I'm halfway through 7. I had to start the interview. I didn't have time to finish it. Sorry.
Yeah,
It's either that or I would have been like,
cool stuff happens with Sheila, definitely in these issues that we're working on right now. There's a bunch of cool Sheila stuff going on. But yeah, I like writing that character. I like trying to turn her into something. Hopefully she ends up being something by the end of this thing.
I'm very curious. Scott, come up with something random.
No, I was going to add that my oldest, my 14-year-old, he just we just watched it. I want to say about 2 months ago, and he's totally pulled into it. So I'll get him the issues so we can both read them. Yeah,
awesome.
What's
that, Jay?
Yeah, well, it's definitely worth reading, man. Especially, like, if you're any kind of fan of Army of Darkness. And if you're someone that's seen that director's cut ending and went, I wonder what happened, go read Army of Darkness Forever. It is literally readily available for you right now. And they're, like I said, the issue 7 just dropped not too long ago. Probably with the time frame of my editing, to be real honest, because I got some other things I got to edit. Because, you know, Tim's got to drop before yours does, Tony. Otherwise, I don't know. I guess I could just flip it. That'd be funny, and really everybody would be like, "What's going on?" I'd be like, "I don't know." All right.
What are you talking about? Yeah, issue 8 went to press recently, so I think that comes out soon. And we're working on issue 9 right now, and I got to write issue 10 here in the next week or so. So it's all coming together.
How are you making sure to juggle all of this, Tony, in consecutively to where one, you make sure you don't miss a date, and 2, make sure nothing blends together and all stays properly apart in your head if you're currently writing 6 different stories like this?
Well, the hardest thing is like getting time to outline stuff, because that's the actual hard part of writing. Like, sitting down and like writing pages is not super difficult. It's hard to make time for it. But with all this stuff, with Feral, with Uncanny Valley, with Army of Darkness, with Local Man, we have an outline of what the series is, and then inside of that we have an outline of what the issues are. So that I've already done like the sort of heavy lifting there, so I can keep it straight because I have it all up in there. But then I do have to sort of like constantly remind myself of, you know, like with Army of Darkness, we were doing like a lettering pass on issue 8, and I was just like, oh shit, like shoot, there's a character that I have to put somewhere, and I hadn't set up when that happened yet. So I had to like go back into the outline and like rearrange for it, just because it's a lot of moving timelines to keep track of, you know. But for the most part, it's all outlined, like all of this stuff. And the great thing about Local Man is that I've got Tim there too, and he can do a lot of the heavy lifting as well. Like, we get together and map out the whole, like, we mapped out this whole 3rd arc and the special that comes after it. A couple months ago, he came out here and just stayed at my place. And so we've got that roadmap there. So it's not easy to keep it all straight, but the way I can keep it all straight is I have it all written down there's a document that says Army of Darkness, and there's a document that says Uncanny Valley. And then I just jump into there and I copy out the part that says issue 4 or whatever I'm writing, and then I, get in there and start breaking it up and putting it together.
So notes. I feel you. I should probably take more for the show. I probably never will, unless somebody takes it to where they're doing the editing part of this. If somebody starts doing the editing part of this, I might take more notes. Until that happens, that ain't gonna happen. But that's just the way that is. But Tony, man, I Scott fired because look, Tony, I could keep you on here for 2 hours chatting, right?
We've done it before.
Hey, man, but did you have fun?
We had fun. We always have fun.
And you had to, and so you know what I mean? That's what makes it to where it's like, look, if I didn't have a timer, I'd be like, I wouldn't believe that amount of time has passed within the span of this, in all honesty. But, I got a thing that tells me how long things run, so I can keep things in, so I can, that's my thing. I got this, so I can make sure episodes don't get so long where I'm like, oh God, I got to go edit.
Just at the top of Skype, it says 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 31 seconds.
Don't tell them what program I use. Not that it matters, because look, if y'all watching the episodes, I hope you're like, did he just say Skype? Yeah, I record this show is all done via Skype. I hope very much so that it in no way, shape, or form looks like it is, and pretty much everybody's told me that it doesn't. So that's good. Except, Tony's over here throwing hearts up in the middle that I'm going to have to I'm like, what was that? I was just, look, Tony's.
We Skyping, baby.
This is going to look really screwy in the edit. You know that, Tony?
I don't think so. Are you sad about that?
No, not really. I mean, I'm honestly amused, to be frank, but it's just based on how no. I don't, and I'm half the time I forget all them buttons are even there, to be real honest. Did that just go? But it went down and then went back up. Can you at least just give me the Orange Cassidy thumb? Come on. Does anybody watch wrestling in here?
No. It was doing a flick. It was flicking a lighter for you.
Oh, well, no. I'm going to go smoke a cigar after this, but that's neither here nor there. It might be better. Look, so nobody watches wrestling? It's that Orange Cassidy thumb. It's the laziest thumb up in history. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. But hey, real quick, I want to know, Scott, you got any last little bit before we let Tony get back to writing so many things? All right.
All good. Yeah.
Well, in that case, I want to let you all know out there, man, look, check all the links in the description. You can find all of Tony's work except some of the stuff that he wouldn't talk about, even though I really tried to get him to. I'm sorry for y'all out there that I couldn't get him to talk about that. I think I got a bit of information for y'all, but only as much as he would allow me to get. I don't want to get nobody in trouble, so there's that too. Right. But make sure you check out all of Tony's work, man. There's all kinds of links in the description you can click. Besides that, I just want you all to do 3 things. 1, give it that thumbs up. 2, get your comic on. 3, have a good night, y'all.
Good night, y'all.
This has been the questionnaire.
Where's the link?
Thanks for checking out the questionnaire.
In the link below, yes?
I will drop it like it's hot.
That's another party.
It's cool, man. I love it.
The questionnaire. That is all.